Okay, everyone, we have our last speaker of the day. I'm really excited to announce Catherine Stihler is our next speaker, who has been an international champion for openness as a legislator and practitioner for over 20 years. In August 2020, Catherine was appointed Chief Executive Officer of Creative Commons, which, as many of you know, is a nonprofit organization that helps overcome legal obstacles to the sharing of knowledge and creativity to address the world's pressing challenges. Catherine was elected vice chair of the European Parliament, Catherine stood for election as a member of the European Parliament for Scotland in 1999, representing the Labour Party. At the European Parliament, she also became one of Scotland's longest serving and most respected legislators. We're so thrilled to have you. Thanks, Catherine.
Thank you so much for that introduction, and that's a large picture up there, but it's great to be here, and I feel so inspired by all the previous speakers, and I think that there's just so much to take away from today, so I just wanted to thank everyone for being so inspiring. But my talk today is around empowering creators with better sharing. Sharing matters, and thanks to the digital revolution, we share things like never before, from family photos to funny videos, from day-to-day life to college courses, and all of those instantaneously. And the variety and volume of sharing today was absolutely unimaginable to many of us even just a decade ago. And now we see social media and publishing platforms, smartphones, cheap data, and expanded internet access have enabled more sharing, both in forms that bring us joy and connection, but also in the spread of lies, hate, and misinformation. And our digital life reflects human nature, and I think some of the discussion earlier in all this complexity, highlighting both the good and the bad. And all this sharing has created a flood of new copyrighted works. Practically everyone is now a publisher, author, many times over, and we think of all of those social media postings that are out there, but is the current copyright paradigm working in our interests? Copyright law is complex, different in different countries, and stands often as a barrier to artists and creators and not an enabler. Copyright impacts us all, artists, creators, and users of content, helping decide what we can share, read, listen to, and watch online. And we all agree that creators should be fairly rewarded for their works, and the economic argument that stronger protection for artists' rights will inevitably lead to more gains for individual creators may appear really convincing in the abstract. However, in practice, the economic argument, we've heard a lot about economics this afternoon, but for copyright does not turn out to be persuasive, because extending copyright terms from a few decades to life plus 70 years has not materially increased earnings for the majority of individual creators. Instead, it's generated greater monopolies, benefiting select corporations whose profit motives lift only a few stars. And the vast majority of creators do not experience the benefits of current copyright system firsthand. These monopolies, as we've heard with previous speakers, restrict the nature and expression of art by punishing or censoring anyone that can't package and sell. And when culture and creativity are paywalled, rented, and held for profit, there's a chill cast on how our society interoperates and ultimately on the health of our democracy and democratic institutions. So what can artists and creators do that don't have a best in legal team at hand? Many digital creatives have become reluctant to include any copyrighted material in their works because of content removals, automatic penalties for alleged infringement on other persons' copyrighted works. And this stops creators from gaining exposure to new audiences and thwarts creativity. Onerous copyright that benefits the few and not the many does not promote innovation, but directly hinders it. So, in order to empower creators and protect democratic societies, Creative Commons has developed an alternative system built upon the existing all rights reserved copyright that enables a commons of knowledge and culture, which is freely accessible to everyone, everywhere. And we offer a set of open licenses and public domain tools free for anyone to use. A different system where creators can make their own choices about which rights they want to keep and which rights they want to share. And by making their own choices for sharing, Creators can reach new and expanded audiences, and people across the planet can access works and ideas to new and help build new creations. Creative Commons licenses are now a global standard for sharing content for creators, researchers, educators, librarians, archivists, and governments. And this established model for open sharing is now emerging in new ways, enabling creators to get credit and reward for their creativity and share their works openly with all, rather than lock them up with rusty keys of copyright. So these emerging practices work by bringing together new technologies for distribution, ownership, and compensation with existing tools to open copyright. As we at Creative Commons celebrate 20 years of facilitating the sharing of content across our planet, we can look ahead and see how our mission intersects with the issues, goals, and values of artists and creators navigating an ever-changing online world. Firstly, our strategic shift at Creative Commons from a focus only on open sharing to focus on better sharing helps us address the careful balance between sharing that's in the public interest and sharing which is not. And this is important at a time when all the benefits that the internet has brought to us are quickly forgotten. And the predominant narrative that we hear, and we've heard this afternoon, is harm rather than public interest. So what are we talking about when we talk about better sharing? Sharing that's inclusive, just, and equitable, where everyone has wide opportunity to access content, to contribute their own creativity, and to receive recognition and rewards for these contributions. Sharing that's reciprocal, where we rebalance the skewed world we live in now, in which a few produce and profit from works that the many consume. And sharing that's sustainable, where open participation in the public commons is the default rather than the exception. At Creative Commons, we want to shift this narrative back to the importance of why sharing matters and how we can do it better. And this is why we are an organising partner in a very nascent Better Internet movement and are actively advocating around the world to ensure that human values and public interest are front and centre in our online world. We also recently launched our Open Climate campaign about accessing climate data and research, and we have 4 years funding for that, and we're deeply excited about that opportunity to try and make climate research more open and more accessible. So as the digital landscape evolves and new technologies like the distributed web that we've heard a little bit about today, the metaverse and AI emerge, we're also bringing the better sharing point of view and the public interest voice, the conversations like this one today, where creators are considering about new paradigms. We heard about scenario planning in the previous speaker, and about how we are all going to have to work together about the changes that we are seeing. And time again, we see the digital public infrastructure that supports the commons that we take for granted under threat. At a time when the public interest often stands in direct contrast to the commercial interests of the creative industries and large tech firms, we need public investment in the structures that undermine our open commons. And if we're not careful, the internet will just be a collection of those company towns where you're paid in company script, can only buy from the company store, and only hear the company line and see the company viewpoint. And with democracy already in such a fragile state and open societies threatened, we need investment in the infrastructure that protects the public interest. I see that Creative Commons is part of that public infrastructure, and without it, we'll be poorer, less open, and certainly less democratic. But now let's take a moment to look at the opportunities of the intersection of better sharing for the public commons and great creator autonomy. The first opportunity may be obvious, but is yet to be fully worked out. Perhaps in this new decentralised web vision where digital artefacts are permanently linked to their essential metadata, we see an opportunity for the tighter connection between works, their authorship, their provenance, and their intellectual property terms. And if you look around the internet today, it's all rather messy, and we can challenge ourselves to clean up this mess in the new forms that can come out of what we see today. The second opportunity is perhaps more obscure. While we might imagine that a new version of the web will disrupt the reigning intellectual property system for the better, In fact, what we see is all rights reserved by default regime still very much at play in new decentralized web works and how it works, like in the copyright debates that we're seeing around NFTs. What's more, lots of confusion is circulating about, say, how NFTs connect to IP rights of underlying works. And while it might seem that owning an NFT somehow magically grants IP rights to a work it references, instead it seems that the same intellectual property complexities that we see with traditional practices still exist in the distributed web. And adding to the confusion, we already see different, incompatible, and sometimes dubious IP practices spreading across the distributed web. In this new world, we have the opportunity to do better by adopting and, if needed, updating powerful tools that we know already work. Standardized open licensing and public domain dedications from Creative Commons that get everyone clear and consistent guidance about their rights. Whether we are thinking of AI or the metaverse or whatever these places and spaces provide for artists like yourselves or others, having met many digital artists embracing the possibilities of what, say, a new web could look like in AI, using their art sometimes to train AI systems. Like one side, last week when I was with Barry at Unfinished, we saw someone who trained an AI system in their own voice and then dedicated it to the public domain. But also knowing many artists who have not consented to their work being used to train AI systems, and where is their voice? If better sharing is to be realised, we need to think of models of consent, attribution, and dispute resolution to enable artists to have the freedom to choose what's best for their art. And another opportunity goes to the heart of better sharing itself. How to ensure that the future of the internet fosters a better public commons than we already have. I see several challenges. One is ease of use. It'll be hard to have an inclusive, just and equitable commons when it's difficult and confusing to create, share and reuse. Closely related is interoperability. In a decentralized paradigm, we also need to make sure that people, information and creative works can cross over different communities and collections without great friction. Another is credibility. It's a huge distraction to the benefits we might realize with technologies like the distributed web when there are still too many scandals in the crypto world. And beyond all that, how do we make challenges like these at the same time to ensure that the web is truly decentralized and doesn't concentrate power, money, and control into the hands of dominant players, whether those players are newly minted or the same old guard? I look around, sorry, I can't see you because I'm in the light and you're in the darkness just now, but I'm looking around when I was in the light, and I see so many people here today who are interested in these challenges and the opportunities. And I'd love to hear more about where you see the opportunities in front of us and the challenges we need to meet. So I want to give you the opportunity if you wanted to ask me any questions, but I wanted to say, above all, thank you to all of you for lasting the course this afternoon, for being here for the last talk, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to share a little bit about the thinking that we're having about how better sharing can build a better commons for us all. Thank you so much.
Does anybody have any questions here? I could run a mic. Yeah, here we go. Mickey.
Hi, Catherine. I love the Creative Commons. I feel I maybe just am too naive about this, so this is more of a question just because I don't know. You know, a lot of my work has been as a product designer, and that leads to often helping people get patents for new things. And patent law also went through a really chilling shift a little while ago, where it shifted to first to file, which means big corporations could file early, versus the first to invent, the person who actually invented. And that sort of minimized, and of course the rise of patent trolls. What is the Creative Commons doing around that sort of IP, around patents and the other kinds of things that might be emergent more than ever?
Sorry, what was your name again?
Mickey.
Thank you so much for that question.
Thank you, Catherine.
It's always good to have the first question. I mean, at the moment, we have taken an interest in IP. We did the Open COVID pledge back in when we were just in that terrible situation of trying to think about what to do. So we got people together, and now that's at American University to help. But copyright, the focus of our work on copyright is still the focus 20 years on. And it hasn't gone away. And something that is really interesting when many people ask us, what are you doing in IP, or what are you doing, what are you doing in patent, or what are you doing in trademark? And we're like, well, we're very much in that kind of copyright column. And that's a good thing. But it's also an interesting observation as we celebrate our 20 years anniversary that instead of the licenses being a patch in the copyright system actually transforming, that has not actually happened. In fact, our licenses have become actually even more important to allow legal sharing. And that's telling, right? You know, we did, I've only been CEO for 2 years, but when you look back at the history of why it was created out of a problem in the American copyright system, it became a global phenomenon because there was copyright problems across the world. And lawyers in different areas, and Barry was there from the beginning, so I'm kind of feeling I'm telling you to suck eggs, Barry, but when you look at what the energy and enthusiasm of lawyers across the globe to translate the licenses so in their own legal jurisdictions there would be legal certainty. And so today, coming out of an American copyright problem, we have a global network, global chapters, and I'd encourage, if any of you are interested, please join our global network. And if you're interested particularly in culture, join our open culture platform because there's lots of good work going on there too. That this energy, enthusiasm has set us on a course where it's, you know, that global aspect of what we're looking at. And what you're touching upon is, you know, when we're thinking about, say, the issue around patents and the kind of global aspect, where a patent, say, you know, we've seen that with the vaccines. You know, we haven't got that right, have we? And where the political will is certainly not there to get that right. And yet we've faced a global pandemic. So we're still very much focused on copyright because the problems around that are still very real. And we think in the next 20 years, as we envision and try and reimagine and I hope dream of something better, that the challenges we face and the learning that we've had about why standards, how we became a model or a standard almost by default, it wasn't by design. That aspect of standards, of interoperability, about how we can share better, whether it's in copyright or within the area that you work upon, is still just as relevant today. And although I can't say that we'll be involved so much in your line of work, because our copyright work still goes on, it's still an area of interest, and where we can impact, we're still there to do that. That was a long answer.
I have a question.
That was a good question.
I want to dig in just a little bit more into, you know what I'm going to ask you.
Yeah, I know.
You know, we have two big technologies that in aggregate that are both big opportunities and big challenges for everybody working in digital arts. One is crypto, Web3, NFTs, bucket. The other is AI.
Yeah.
You know, the pandemic wiped out opportunities for artists everywhere, you know, and in the midst of that, this miracle kind of thing came down for a lot of people and allowed them to, you know, have a market. And there was often not a market for digital art a lot of places before. Also, we had a lot of friends that started thinking critically about the climate implications of that and the financialization of art. And we've had this great discussion that everybody should have had 50 years ago, and some people did. AI is almost every week something's released that's going to change definitions of what people think about art. There are no answers to this. How is Creative Commons thinking about interfacing with this changing technology landscape on the web to?
So these are very good questions, and ones which we are very cognizant of, Barry, as you know. And Barry was at a little round table we had was it just last? No.
It was like, what year is this? It was like last week.
It was just last week. And that's how quickly you feel time
Last week in New York, we were with a bunch of early Creative Commons folks and
who are working in new places and spaces, which is helping us with our thinking because this has been seen as being CC zero summer, hasn't it? And the conversation still goes on. And even in this past week, when I've been down at a Web3 summit in Los Angeles on Thursday night, you've got people who are really using the licenses, the CC0, and others who are very against things going into the public domain. And so these tensions, as we talked about, Barry, are very real. Now, I always say to the team, and always challenge myself, what is ours to do in the world of today? And the thing is, we cannot stand back and allow things to happen where better sharing, the public interest, and the commons isn't part of the conversation. And at the moment, there's an opportunity, I think, to drive some of the value layers that will be set down. And if we are not part of that conversation, putting the public interest first, putting better sharing at the centre of some of these conversations, then things will be lost, and you will not have the opportunity that some of the things there are definitely an opportunity. But if it's just all the worst aspects that we've seen, that's not an opportunity. And I think everyone in this room wants to see something better than what we see today, and you've seen this in the conversations that we've had up to this final one. Well, then let's see how we can do that. And how can we do that? Well, we have to work together. We have to share the problems that we're facing. And we also have to think about some of the positive solutions that are out there that we can utilise. And there are some solutions that we've got. But that public interest, public value layer, that's why we're part of this nascent Better Internet campaign, to try and put that forward. And let's see where we go with that. But, you know, look out for when the launch is. It's going to be quite, I think, God, it's the 1st of October, isn't it, today? So, I mean, we're already in October. The year is passing. But look out for the Better Internet work that we're doing, along with Internet Archive, Wikimedia, and Public Knowledge. And I'm really looking forward to see what we can do together. Thanks for the question.
All right.
It's a work in progress, Barry. Work in progress, but we're going to get there.
One last question. When is the 20th anniversary party and where? The 17th of November.
And you're also doing something too?
Yeah, well, we're working on something.
So we're very
working on a little something.
So, yeah, it's 17th of November in San Francisco, and if you're interested, please let me know.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks.